Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's Boardroom. Today, we're going to be talking about the businesses that have been hardest hit by the second wave. But first, we are live, as always, on Facebook. So please do add your comments and your questions below. We'll do what we can to put them to our interviewees. We would love you to join the conversation. If you aren't watching live, don't worry. This is streamable back on who'swho.mt, Malta's leading business portal, and you can add your questions and your comments there as well. And if you have any suggestions about future shows that you'd like to see related to Malta's business community, then we'd love to have your feedback. So again, today's topic is the second wave and the businesses that have been hardest hit by the numbers going up again so far. And to help us understand a little bit about that topic, allow me to welcome today's guests. They are David Xuereb. He is the president of the Malta Chamber of Commerce, Enterprise and Industry. Howard Keith Debono, he of course is a music producer, the founder of Jagged House, and a well-known X Factor judge. And Mauro Gasan, who is the managing director of Petite Events Limited, the managing director of I Do Not, so very involved in the tourism sector. Thank you all for being here. Great to welcome you on the Boardroom.
Hi, thank you for having us.
For inviting us.
My pleasure. David, I'm going to come to you first. You've been on the Boardroom before, so you know how this show works. And it was a few months ago that we last spoke. And I'd love to have an update from you about the second wave and, of course, the businesses on the front line, the people that have been most affected by this second wave.
Okay, so if I may, told in short is I might disappoint you to note that I'm not sure whether this is the second wave, and if it is, it certainly is going to be not going to be the last one. The Chamber of Commerce has a long time ago realized that until such time as we will have a jab that will, protect us from this blessed virus, who, by the way, is brainless, and that's something maybe to talk about, a brainless virus. And we're battling a brainless virus. However, the fact is it's affecting us, and numbers will shoot up and then will come down. And then you know what? It will shoot up again and come down and so on and so forth until such time as we are inoculated and ultimately therefore prevented from, again, being infected by a brainless virus. The only way to deal with this virus is by using our brain, which I hope is larger than that of the virus, simply by ensuring that the virus is not able to move from one person to the other. It's as simple as that. I know it sounds stupid and strange, but really that is what we're dealing with right now. And this whole hullabaloo about economy and about health and about wellness and about stress and all that jazz is all about us using our brain appropriately to ensure that we are able to keep this brainless virus in check. So second wave, I'm not sure it's the second one, but if it is, because we might have had other ripples before, that's why I say that. Well, if it is, then it will come down, and we're already seeing the numbers going down. But October will come and November will come and the numbers will go up again, and we will keep playing this game until such time as we're either inoculated or we perfect our way of managing it. That is, we do not lower our guard, and we ensure that we understand how to deal with this brainless virus.
Thank you, David. A great introduction to the conversation there. And yes, of course, this is going to be all about management going forward. David, staying with you just on this, which are the industries that the Chamber of Commerce have been hardest hit by this first 1.2 wave or second wave?
Okay. So certainly the way to combat the virus is by social distancing, is by having personal distance between one person and another. So any industry that brings people together is, of course, the most hard hit. So tourism is the obvious. Anything to do with entertainment and leisure and people, socializing as people would and people would like to, is, of course, an area that is immediately affected by the manner with which this virus jumps from one person to the other. Clearly, the rest of the industries, whether it is in the services sector, the manufacturing sector, certainly the retail sector, any other thing is secondary, really, to the most hard hit, and that would be those industries that bring people close to each other to actually socialize. We are, of course, have been experiencing a number of industries that have took a serious cut in their revenue from 25, 50, even down to 95% of the revenue, which is dramatic, which is serious. either because they are directly influenced by the social distancing aspect of the way we're managing this pandemic, or as an influence of people's confidence on how safe they feel in dealing with their office or with their shop or with their factory or wherever it is that they are interacting with others.
Okay. David, thank you. And we're lucky today to have on the panel two people who, know a lot about the sectors that you said are very, very much in the front line. Howard, I'm going to come to you first. You are the president of the recently launched Malta Entertainment Industry and Arts Association. This is an association that, of course, is representing artists, those within the culture sector. And as David said, one of the very hardest hit sectors because cultural events, large events, just cannot take place at the moment. We saw what happened at the end of the first wave when large events started again. That was one potentially of the triggers for the second wave. So, Howard, how are artists and those in the cultural sector coping with this latest development?
Well, I think the first shock came with the actual, announcement that the pandemic was in Malta. And I agree with David. There's no such thing as second wave. God knows how many waves you're going to have till the vaccine is actually effective and distributed. It is, without a doubt, the first industry to be hit and potentially the last to recover. Having said that, I think one needs to understand how the industry actually operates, because not a lot of people are aware how the streams of revenue come to this industry. It's divided in three, right? You have the mass gatherings or the gatherings, being the most revenue source to say. So basically, that's about 80 to 90% of all revenue is related to gatherings. So when a pandemic hits us this hard, the creative sector obviously is shut down immediately. And it's not just a case of saying, okay, but the arts can continue, etc., because you need to understand that the revenue is 80 to 90% comes from gatherings. So the rest, which is digital platforms and third-party agreements, licensing, and all those, that's no more than 5 to 13%, truthfully, in revenue. I had the opportunity that in April, I've had discussions with general managers, CEO, vice presidents from big record labels like Warner, Universal, Disney, and all those. And in April, they were saying that they foresee a 3 years before the industry can actually start again, because the whole chain collapses, from tours, and keeping in mind that the industry isn't based on an instant service that you give. There's preparation, sometimes for projects that take 6 months to a year beforehand. So automatically, when the doors are shut down, it's not just a case that when you open, it's back in the game again, right? It doesn't work that way. Whether it's conferences, whether it's performances, there's a lot of pre-preparations which happen. It requires a lot of people getting together, sometimes a crew about 300 to 500 people, and it's obviously it's timelined. And this pandemic is literally a killer for this scenario.
Okay. Howard, thank you. I'll obviously be coming back to you for more insight in how the entertainment sector is coping. But first of all, Mauro, thank you for being with us today. And obviously, you are heavily involved in the tourism sector, but not just the tourism sector, particularly around event travel like weddings and also group travel. And they have been extremely hard hit. What has your experience been so far? And particularly now, how are you feeling about this? Let's keep calling it a second wave.
I mean, it all started on the 12th of March, and we are involved into sectors, as you have very well said, in the MICE sector and also in the destination wedding sector, which both, unfortunately, depend on a foreign audience. So for us, once they've closed the travel, I mean, we had my company, both the weddings and also the MICE company, they haven't had €1 of income since the beginning of March. And I don't foresee anything coming in, if God, wants, before the start of April of next year. So anything that comes in between now and end of March, it will be a bonus, because when we did a budget scenario way back in April, we've done these two forecasts. However, the effects has been catastrophic on us because I don't see the MICE business, the meeting incentives and conference business, coming back on again before another year. I think first people have to find the courage and the willingness to travel on a personal basis. Then the companies will say, okay, then let's start doing the events again. So I'm foreseeing that the wedding segment will come back again before the MICE segment. Obviously enough, our main exercise since the beginning of April was mainly cost cutting. We've been working from home, but the main precaution is to keep the cost low as possible, since we're not foreseeing any income before another 6, 7, 8 months.
Okay. Thank you, Mauro. Very, very somber thoughts there, and sobering, of course, for somebody like you, David, who, of course, is looking at the wider sector and how we keep businesses going. I'm curious how, what advice is the chamber able to offer at this point? Is there contingencies that businesses can put in place? How can they keep going?
Okay, clearly there's no magic solution. However, there is an obvious way of how to deal with this. The chamber has been talking about this now for many months. Looks like government is about to start saying this too, which is great. And that is, COVID is with us, and we actually do not yet know when it's going to go away. And therefore, the best thing to do is to assume that we're going to have to live with COVID, our social life, our personal life, our business life. Anything we do has to keep COVID in mind. We should not assume that we're going to go back to a pre-COVID era where doing things without the risk of infection or without the risk of the effects of COVID being behind us, because it probably will sit with us, if not in the longer term, certainly in the short to medium term. So actually, if I had to go back, say, to 2030 and look back at this year, what is the storyline I would like to say from a successful perspective? What good story would I like to say? And actually, in 2030, I think what we all should be saying is to say, well, first of all, remember 2020 and the big pandemic and the real serious issues and how much we missed our grandparents and the loved ones and the vulnerable people. That's going to affect us. That's bad. That will never be good. That will always be bad. However, the successful individuals and the successful businesses are those that are able to reinvent themselves in a moment that is telling us what the objectives are or what the priorities should be. And those certainly is going to be all about contactless services. They're going to talk about the use of digital technology, automation, climate change, therefore the ability also to move into businesses that respect the environment. All those things that, frankly, we've been talking about for very long. We realized how influential all these matters are partly also on the pandemic and maybe our inability to deal with the pandemic during 2020, which will change our life now. We're going to transition. This is traumatic for most of us anyway. But if we had to project ourselves, as I said before, to 2030 and look back, we realize these are the formative times. These are the times that will actually make us or break us. So actually, we are currently advocating to everybody, including businesses, for some easier than it is for others. And of course, because I'm looking at Howard and Mauro, and of course, it's certainly not easy. But the only way we are able to deal with this in a COVID environment is to try and find how to work in a factory, to work in an office, or maybe not in a factory, not in an office, to work in a manner that allows us to keep ourselves virus-free and therefore healthy, not only from a physical point of view, but also from a psychological, mental point of view, because this is not just about contagion of a virus from person to the other that can make one sick, and God forbid also, even more serious than that, but also can affect us in other ways, which is just as serious. Look at schools right now. Look at what we're going through to try and reinvent ourselves on how to educate our kids. It's not only about the education to kids, which of course is very important, not only about the ability for kids to interact with each other, which is as important, but also the effect it's going to have on the economy into the future and on the social and mental well-being of parents and the rest of the economy that depends on those parents actually working and being able to take some time away from the kids to actually focus on something else, which is part of our mental well-being. We know what I'm talking about, especially after the last quarter or the last half of the last scholastic year, having kids at home with the parents. So really and truly, the only advice is no magic wand, and as I said, for some more harder than others, but to think of how to deal with our business, keeping in mind that COVID is going to be with us at least in the medium term.
Thank you, David. And yes, following up from what you've said, it is going to be a challenge for parents. That is something that we know is very difficult. Some articles calling this an apocalypse for women in the workplace, and something that we will be discussing on a future show. But Howard, again, I'm coming to you now to talk about how this has affected artists. I mean, artists in Malta, like artists anywhere, are among the people who aren't necessarily there are very few who are earning a very good income from what they do. The majority of artists slog away day to day and really, really have to work hard for the little bit of success and recognition that they get. So something like this is a massive hit. So can you talk to us a little bit about the psychology of the artists that you are seeing in the association that you've put together and how they're coping?
Yeah, well, you know, when it was allowed again to have events, obviously those who could put their events in, they actually went for it. And then you have a scenario where you had people who actually use the online system to have their art shared in that format. The problem was, and remains truthfully, to monetize it digitally, right? You have to first educate the audience to get to that point. So if you take the film industry per se, Netflix, whatever, that has been going on already before. It was happening, right? So it's no different experience. Yes, it's an experience to go to the cinema and people love that and enjoy that. But we've never experienced this before. Our industry has never experienced this before. And I do feel that our industry takes a bit longer than other industries to actually react. That's a fact, you know. So we've had different types of reactions and coping mechanisms. But the first most important thing I would have to say is you need to understand that most people in the industry decided to have this as a full-time job probably 10 to 15 years ago, because prior to that was unthinkable. So there was this boom, and every year that passes, this industry was booming and generating quite good economy, right, for the country. And it has been doing so through various networks and working abroad and people and you know, artists coming here in the scenario. And in that regard, I believe we've seen quite a explicit growth. What happens is when something like this hits our industry, you have people who might consider, you know what, I'm going to go back to another job, because it's already a fragile industry as it is, right? So when you add all these uncertainties, and to be honest, I think that poses a problem as well to the government, because you're going to have people knocking on other sectors again and staring away from this industry, which was doing so well. So we need to understand these realities, because we can all talk about fairyland scenarios, but truthfully, unless we understand that 80 to 90% of our economy, of our revenue is down to gatherings, we will never understand what needs to be done. Sure, there is a virtual technology, which I really believe in, and I think that is something in the future. I don't think it's developed enough, but there's a lot of potential there. But the actual experience of sharing this depends on engagement, depends on crowd interaction. I think, as David said, you know, with social distancing and all the restrictions in place, one can find ways how to minimize the risk and still have a way of making that happen. And I think it did happen. I think there were some events that happened very responsibly. There were no cases reported from there at all. And then there were a few others which, you know, as we say, people let their hair down. And then alcohol kicks in and it's impossible to control. So we've had two very distinct ways of doing it alongside other online. But I must admit, the online it's very hard to monetize that.
Absolutely. I mean, if events online, culture online, etc., there have been a few examples that I've seen, but very few that have managed to bring in any revenue for the artists behind them. And similarly, Mauro, I mean, tourism is a sector that requires you to travel and to be with other people. I mean, what is the psychological state of those in the tourism industry at the moment? I mean, we did a show a couple of months back about the tourism sector and how it was, you know, at the time it was quite hopeful and the airports had just opened and people in the sector were feeling good about the fact that travelers might be coming back. But of course, now we have been hit very hard. We're on certain quarantine lists. Malta has been blacklisted in certain places. You know, has there been another very negative step psychologically for those in the sector?
Definitely. However, you know, it's as David was saying, tourism is quite, and especially our niche, it's quite a people's market. So we are used to travel, go to fairs, even our events themselves, they are people's industry. So, you know, going digital, it's something that I can never ever actually accept, and I don't know if it's even possible in our industry. The psychological hit that we have experienced about 3 weeks ago, it was very bad, not only financially, but also for motivation. Keep into consideration that myself and also my staff, we are used to be, you know, very busy, running around, having multiple events on a single day. And all of a sudden, we've been, 6 months at home doing nothing. So we were looking forward for the business that we had in September and October, which was still on our books up until 3 weeks ago. Then all of a sudden, they started getting cancelled or postponed for next year. To be very honest, although we say that we blame the fault on ourselves and due to mass gatherings in Malta, etc., I think really and truly we have anticipated the rest of Europe by just 1 week. Instead of us closing certain countries, they have closed us beforehand. However, I think it was a matter of a week or a bit more that we would have closed them ourselves. So I think it was in the pipeline that the business that we had in September and October would have been cancelled anyway. When you see numbers, you know, in France, in Spain, they're in a much worse situation that we are. You know, Spain had 81,000 cases in 10 days. And Paris have like 3,000 cases a day. So, and actually the thing which is worrying the people is not coming to Malta. And the thing which is like sort of bugging people is that once they fly back home, they have to do 2 weeks quarantine. You know, up until yesterday, I had a client and he told me, listen, in October, we come what may, even if we have to do swab tests before coming there, the only thing which will stop us from coming, besides the, you know, Air Malta saying we're not going to fly, is that coming back we have to spend 2 weeks quarantine, just because it's a business trip. So having your employees in quarantine for 2 weeks, it's not business. It's healthy for your business. So that's the situation we are facing at the moment.
Okay, Mauro, and cards on table, do you think we are going to see companies in the travel sector in Malta closing down as a result of COVID?
Well, already way back in April, I have written on my Facebook wall, which I don't use very much, but back then I had written that there would be much more victims of this COVID as companies rather than human beings. And obviously enough, companies have closed down, are closing down, and will close down. I think the key will be that cash is king, you know, by when the tourism will be back on again. So at the moment, the most important thing, besides reinventing the wheel, which we cannot because we entirely depend on foreign tourism, is to be stay proactive so that we keep the name of Malta and our companies on the top of the list, so that when the doors reopen, we will be there and we'll be at an advantageous position vis-a-vis competing countries. But on the other hand, we'll be vigilant on expenses. I believe that the MICE industry and also the destination weddings will be very strong beginning of next year. Why? Because if there is a time where companies need to motivate their employees, would be, after this whole drama. So because people would need more motivation, they need to travel, and they need to be more considered as a group. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. But obviously enough, we don't know when.
Of course. David, obviously you have a wider sector view from your role at the Chamber. At the moment, what can the government do more of to support these frontline sectors at the moment?
So yes, at the moment we are very much in the thick of negotiating the next budgetary incentives or budgetary measures that the government needs to introduce come October. So we're very much in the throes of that. We've presented, we've prepared our proposals and we're presenting them to the Prime Minister next Monday. And we're having a debate on this on Wednesday at the Chamber. Ultimately, there certainly needs to be a couple of things. We've learned quite a couple of lessons in the last couple of months. One is that wage subsidies and subsidies of that kind cannot be terminated at the end of September. Have to carry on, have to be extended. Maybe, however, if I may, now this is sort of trying to be as creative and as tangible as possible with the way we use national money, if I may, is that the wage subsidy should be connected with serious actions being taken by company owners and directors and CEOs to actually re-engineer their businesses to be truly COVID friendly, if that is the term we're going to be using now. So rather than wait for us to go back to the normality we had in February, January this year, we should really be taking actions, proactive actions, to be different, to be better, to be stronger, thanks to the lessons learned in COVID. So I would, suggestions, honest, tangible, professional suggestions would be, yes, of course, we need to extend the wage subsidy. However, it needs to be tagged with serious, tangible changes that makes our businesses more resilient and more sustainable. That is, in the long term, COVID or no COVID. Could have been a pandemic, could be another virus, could be God knows what else. We really need to have that. The second, which we have worked very hard on, and I dare say been super accepted by government, but we really, really need to shed the information and the motivation out there into the public, is for all of us, whether it's an honest, genuine single person, or whether it is a company, small, medium, or large, to actually stop and think outside the box. Normally, that is done through the development of what we call a business plan. So you actually ask all the pertinent questions, you ask all the difficult questions, you check whether there are things in the business that wasn't quite working anyway, COVID or no COVID, and maybe do something with that. Something was working well and maybe beef it up. Other things we were not doing because we were too busy last year, and maybe this is the time to develop into. Understand where the market is moving, keeping in mind climate change, as I said, zero carbon economy, health and wellness of our people, all these, digitalization, big data, quantum physics, all these things that are going to propel us into the future. Try to appreciate what of that we can take in and adapt our businesses to become truly stronger, thanks to the fact that COVID asked us to stop and think. This is how I would like to present it. And the more our businesses are able to carry out these business plans, the better we're able to fare this wave or the next waves. We know that government has presented a 5,000 euro, at least for small businesses, 5,000 euro package to be able to invest in a proper business plan by professionals, ideally not within the firm, but actually externals, to ensure that we're being asked the right pertinent and difficult questions in order to come out with the appropriate answers to make us truly stronger. Frankly, COVID or no COVID, if this is a process that all businesses are able to carry out periodically, say once every 2 years, then the chances are that we will truly have a resilient form of business development within each and every one of our businesses. This is really the recommendation suggestions I would make.
Thank you, David. Yes, it's going to be all about future proofing. We know that, and great advice there. And similarly, Howard, how can the entertainment industry future proof, and what policy support would you like to see from the government? I'm going to have to ask you to unmute.
My bad, sorry.
Don't worry.
So I would start to first of all make sure that we safeguard the livelihood of the professionals, of those who took a decision that this is going to be their career. And yes, in that case, the Annex A supplement is very important. And we've seen through examples and we've seen through surveys that it was a lifesaver, literally. But it's not enough. We have to literally make use of everything we can, utilize all we possibly can, from incentivizing the private sector to invest in the arts and entertainment, tax incentives. Another thing which we are calling a guarantee facility. A guarantee facility isn't the case where the government actually pays money, but comes in as a guarantee for projects to happen, because projects need 6 months to a year, right, in advance. So what happens is, in the case of events being cancelled twice or 3 times, they're now saying, we're not going to go through that again, because we're going to just keep on losing money. So at least the government can give us some sort of guarantee for these projects to happen, right? And if it happens, it's great. No money comes up from the government, everything as is. Then we have other things as we consider to be seed funding, and other things related to rental spaces and how the government can help. But it can't be just one thing. I agree with David 100%. It can't be just wage supplement, but that is important in an urgent manner to safeguard the livelihood. But then let's look at what the industry could be like in the years to come. And this is where I believe it becomes quite interesting for us to look at different models. I mentioned before the virtual reality technology, which can be a viable tool for entertainment and arts. It's a bit cold, yes, it's not the same experience, but let's look at situations with the VR headsets, with the application on your mobile, that this can translate into something that the industry can potentially use. Another thing is content creators might need to think of ways to give the consumers the option to rework their work. Netflix recently announced a choose your own soundtrack. Basically, that opens doors to another stream of revenue. Another one, and I was involved in this, using the Bitcoin technology, one could find ways and algorithms where the consumer ends up being in partnership with the creators. So there are various ways we can look at. These are a bit thinking outside of the box, as David mentioned, obviously. But it is a potential, there's a potential mindset to have looking into the future.
Absolutely. Great to hear potential opportunities there for artists. Howard, thank you. And Mauro, a similar question to you. If you were in a policy planning position at this point, what would you be saying that the tourism sector, particularly groups, MICE, weddings, etc., needs to survive?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it will be great if the authorities would implement what they have promised back in end of May, because the majority of the initiatives, like the rent refund, like the electricity, like the consultancy that David has mentioned, no guidelines have been issued as of today, 2 months down the line. What are we waiting for? That more companies go bankrupt or they are into more financial difficulties? If something has been announced, it needs to be already planned from before so that it's launched immediately. Because, when we've heard all those initiatives like electricity, utility, consultancy, we were like, okay, we saw we got motivated. We said, okay, we're being helped. But 3 months down the line, we haven't received nothing. Actually, I'm lying. Lying. Yesterday, we received an email about the guidelines of the 50% of the rent, but no applications have been sent yet. So when are we going to receive this aid? The COVID supplement has to remain definitely until March, April next year, and has to remain as is. Because I've had rumors that it's going to remain, but they're going to go down on the funds, going to go lower on the funds. And that cannot happen. I mean, there will be mass redundancies. From the tourism side, I think there needs to be like a rescue fund all across the niches. So not just for MICE. It needs to go for the diving sector, for the music sector, for the destination planning, for the wedding, destination weddings, all across the board, to regenerate our sector. Whereas companies like mine, they will be given government aid to be more proactive without touching our liquidity, because at the end of the day, our liquidity at the moment is very, very sensitive. We would like to stay proactive, be on the front line. However, the resources are limited.
Okay, thank you, Mauro. And as we wrap up today's conversation, I would love to get your advice as business leaders for other people in the sector who perhaps would be looking to you for ideas and perhaps even support about how they could continue to cope. Mauro, I'll come to you first.
Well, is that, we need to stay strong, preferably, we need to use the local support that we have. One day or another, this will be maybe never over, but we have to learn how to live with it.
Okay, thank you, Mauro. Howard, advice to artists at the moment?
Indeed, to definitely keep strong. Let's not underestimate the mental issues, the depressions, which are hitting a lot of people. I think our sector is very beneficial to that, and we need to look at it as essential because of one of the reasons is because of that, besides the philanthropic things that the industry does. So let's try to keep positive. Let's keep the fight, because I think it's very important. Just like other countries, the governments reacted immediately towards the hard hit industries, and we still haven't had that recovery that we need. Stay strong, be creative, be yourself.
Thank you, Howard. And finally, David, your advice as we wrap up today's episode.
Certainly agreed with what I heard. I would say let's not be naive, and let's be realistic, because those are some of those maybe part of the pain points I have about what happened in the last couple of months, about us thinking that this virus is over, or maybe we're over things. That was, I think, a bit naive of us, all of us. Some of us actually did drop down our guard. However, the obvious is this, and I'm very clear about this. We are a nation, a small nation, and a couple of people who speak to each other so easily we know each other. We can hold hands, if you like, and become one. Now, why do I say this? Because we are, after all, the rest of the world is going through the same pandemic. We're not the only ones. Malta is not the only one. Everybody is the same. The only difference is that everybody all the other countries are having these sort of conversations, and the stronger economies in the world are those who are able to pick themselves up, be positive, remain positive, be creative, be energized, be realistic, and not naive. That's also very important, and move fast. Now, moving fast for us, in a way, comes second nature because of our size and the fact that we're nimble enough to be able to make a difference very fast. This is an opportunity, really. Any entrepreneur worth his salt looks at this moment as a moment of great opportunity. Bar the health, the physical and mental health issues, of course, that we need to deal with, and the entertainment industry certainly has a major role to play. And I would dare say the rest of the business industry needs to recognize this as being a major player to ensure that our nationals, our employees, our country remains positive, remains strong, mentally strong. It's really important. However, in moving forward with our serious vision and objectives, such as zero carbon economy by 2050, maybe more aggressive than that, I may dare say, ensuring that we eat healthily, ensuring that we're able to connect the dots and move into a digital world that is second to none. We were there once, we should be getting there again. Again, in 2030, I would like for us to have another call like this, Joe, organized by yourself, and look back at 2020 and say, you remember that conversation we had? This is where we are now. And thanks to the fact that we realize that COVID is a reality, that we've been very, very proactive and very creative in the way we have changed our ways, thanks to COVID, we are now truly not only a healthy country, but also as a super economy again in the center of the Mediterranean, like the rest of our history. And let us take this opportunity. Let's grab it and be the true, mature, professional, and also responsible entrepreneurs we are all meant to be.
Thank you, David. Again, great sentiment there, and I will certainly put that date in my diary for our chat in 2030. I look forward to it. Mauro, Howard, David, thank you so much for being with us on the Boardroom today. To everyone listening at home or from the office, as always, thank you for being with us on the Boardroom, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.